The woman satisfactory across the aisle didn't just disrespect Judge Judy, she did something far worse. She smiled while doing it. Not a nervous smile, not an awkward, caught-off-guard grin. A deliberate, teeth-baring, I-own-this-room kind of smile that made the bailiff take a half-step closer to the bench. Her name was Victoria Hale, 42 years old, blonde highlights sharp enough to match her attitude. She wore a blazer that cost more than most people's rent and earrings that caught the courtroom lights every time she tilted her chin, which she did often. She had filed a lawsuit against her former business partner, a man named Derek Simmons, claiming he owed her $47,000 for a real estate investment gone wrong. Standard case, standard amount. Nothing about the paperwork suggested today would be anything other than routine. But the moment Victoria opened her mouth, routine died. "I don't see why I have to explain anything to you," she said, staring directly at Judge Judy with the kind of entitlement that doesn't come from confidence. It comes from never being told no. Judge Judy set her pen down, slowly. The way someone sets down a weapon they haven't decided to use yet. "Let me explain something to you, Ms. Hale. In this room, I'm the only person who doesn't have to explain herself. Everyone else does, including you. Especially you." Victoria's smile didn't waver. If anything, it widened. "I just meant this is a simple case. He took my money. I want it back. I don't understand why we need all this theater." The word theater landed on the bench like a slap. Judge Judy leaned back. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at Derek Simmons, the defendant, who stood at his table with the posture of a man who had already lost something long before this courtroom. His suit was wrinkled at the elbows. His tie was loose. His eyes were locked on the table in front of him, avoiding everyone and everything. He didn't look like a man who stole $47,000. He looked like a man who was tired of fighting someone who would never stop. Judge Judy turned back to Victoria. "You filed this claim. You wanted this hearing. And now you're calling my courtroom theater?" Victoria tilted her head, that patronizing tilt people use when they believe they're smarter than everyone in the room. "I just want what's mine, Your Honor. That's all." "Then let's find out what's yours," Judge Judy replied. "And what isn't." She opened the file. The case, on paper, was straightforward. Victoria Hale and Derek Simmons had co-invested in a commercial property 18 months ago. According to Victoria's claim, Derek had mismanaged the funds, made unauthorized withdrawals, and ultimately caused the investment to collapse, leaving her out $47,000. Derek's defense was thin, 2 pages, no exhibits, no witnesses, just a typed statement that read, "I did not steal from Ms. Hale. The investment failed due to circumstances I will explain in court." Judge Judy scanned both filings, then looked up. "Ms. Hale, walk me through the investment. When did it start?" Victoria straightened, clearly enjoying the stage. 18 months ago, Derek approached me with what he called a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a commercial lot near downtown. He said the value would triple in a year. "And you believed that?" "I did my research," Victoria said. "The area was developing. The numbers added up. I invested $47,000. He matched it." Judge Judy glanced at Derek. "Is that accurate?" Derek nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. We both put in equal amounts." "So you each invested $47,000? Judy confirmed. "Yes." Victoria jumped in before Judy could continue. "But the difference is I didn't touch the money. He did. He started pulling from the account within 3 months. Judy held up a hand. "We'll get to that. Let me see the account records." Victoria slid a folder across the table. Different from anything the court had on file, neatly organized, color-coded tabs. Professional enough to look prepared by a lawyer, which was unusual given that Victoria claimed she was representing herself. Judy opened it. The first page was a bank statement showing a joint account with both their names. The initial deposits were clear, $47,000 from each party. But starting around month 3, withdrawals appeared. $5,000 here, $8,000 there, always from the same source. "These withdrawals," Judy said, tapping the highlighted lines, "were made by you, Mr. Simmons?" Derek exhaled through his nose. "Yes." Victoria's smile returned, victorious. "See, he admits it." "I admit I made withdrawals," Derek clarified, voice low. "I do not admit I stole anything." Judge Judy raised a brow. "Then what were the withdrawals for?" Derek hesitated. His fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Whatever he was about to say, it cost him something to say it. They were for the property, he said. Permits, inspections, contractor deposits, things that needed to be paid before the investment could move forward. Victoria scoffed, loudly, theatrically. That is such a lie. There were no contractors. There was no progress. The lot sat empty for months while he drained our account. Judge Judy looked at Derek. Do you have receipts? Some, he said. Not all. A few were cash transactions. Victoria turned toward the audience as if performing for them. Cash transactions with no receipts. How convenient. Judy's voice dropped. Ms. Hale, face the bench. Victoria turned back, but the smug expression remained cemented in place. Judy continued. Mr. Simmons, you're telling me you spent this money legitimately on the investment? Yes, Your Honor. And you have partial documentation? Yes, I also have emails between us where I explained every withdrawal. Victoria's expression flickered, just for a half second, a micro-reaction, the kind most people would miss. But Judge Judy didn't miss anything. You communicated about these withdrawals? Judy asked, turning to Victoria. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. He sent me emails full of excuses. That doesn't make the spending legitimate. Judy leaned forward. I didn't ask whether you liked his explanations. I asked whether you were aware of the withdrawals as they happened. Victoria paused, just a beat too long. I was aware of some, but not the amounts. So you knew he was spending money from the account. Not like that. He made it sound routine. But you knew. Victoria's jaw tightened. I trusted him. That was my mistake. Judge Judy set the folder down. Her expression shifted, not to sympathy, not to suspicion, but to that precise, calculated focus she wore when the story being told didn't match the story being hidden. Mr. Simmons, she said, you mentioned the investment failed. What happened? Derek looked up for the first time. Really looked up. His eyes were tired but steady. The property had a lien on it, he said. A tax lien we weren't told about when we purchased. Judy's eyes narrowed. A lien? From whom? The previous owner. He owed $120,000 in back taxes. When the city came to collect, the lien transferred to us as the new title holders. I tried to negotiate it down. I spent months going back and forth with the county, but they wouldn't budge. Victoria's expression tightened. Not guilt. Annoyance. The annoyance of someone whose narrative was being complicated. And the property? Judy asked. Foreclosed, Derek said. 3 months ago. We lost everything. Both of you lost everything? Yes, both our investments. Gone. Judy turned to Victoria. Ms. Hale, if both of you lost your investments due to a lien neither of you knew about, why are you suing him for $47,000? Victoria's chin lifted. Because he was the one managing the deal. He was supposed to do the due diligence. He told me the property was clean. Did you do any due diligence yourself? Victoria blinked. I trusted him. That's the second time you've said that, Judy noted. But trust is not due diligence. Victoria's jaw clenched. He came to me with the deal. He promised me it was solid. That makes him responsible. Judy tapped the table once. It makes him your partner, not your guarantor. The distinction landed hard. Victoria's smile finally cracked, not completely, but enough for the first hairline fracture to become visible. Judy looked back at the folder, Victoria's meticulously organized, color-coded folder. She flipped past the bank statements, past the highlighted withdrawals, past the timeline of the investment collapse. And then she stopped. There was a page in the back that didn't match the rest. Not color-coded, not highlighted, almost hidden behind a divider tab, as if it had been included by accident, or by someone who didn't realize what it revealed. Judy slid it out slowly. It was an email, printed, time-stamped, sent from Victoria Hale to an address that wasn't Derek's. Judy read it once, then again. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes sharpened, the way a lens focuses just before capturing something decisive. She placed the email face down on the bench. Ms. Hale, she said, voice calm, measured, dangerously quiet. Who is Raymond Park? The courtroom shifted, not a gasp, more like a gravitational pull, everyone leaning forward by an inch without realizing it. Victoria's reaction was immediate. Her composure didn't crack. It shattered. The smile vanished. The tilt of her chin dropped. For the first time since walking into the courtroom, she looked like someone who had been caught standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's nobody. A friend. Why? Judy lifted the email again. Because according to this email, which you included in your own evidence folder, you wrote to Raymond Park 3 days before the lien was discovered, and I quote, "Don't worry about the title issue. Derek doesn't know. By the time he finds out, we'll have already repositioned." The room didn't go silent. It went hollow, the kind of silence that absorbs sound. Derek's head turned toward Victoria, slowly. The exhaustion in his eyes was replaced by something else. Not anger, not betrayal exactly, but the terrible clarity of a man who just realized the knife was never coming from the front. Victoria's mouth opened. "That's taken out of context." Judy held up the page. "Then provide context. Right now." Victoria's hands pressed flat on the table, fingers splaying as though trying to steady herself on a surface that was crumbling. "Raymond is a real estate consultant. I asked him for advice on the property. That email was about a different title issue, a zoning thing, not the lien." Judy's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Ms. Hale, this email references the title issue, uses the word repositioned, and explicitly states that Derek doesn't know. Are you telling me there were 2 separate title problems on the same property?" Victoria's breath caught. Her eyes moved from the judge to the email to Derek to the floor. Everywhere, landing nowhere. Because if there weren't 2 separate issues," Judy continued, "then this email suggests you knew about the lien before your partner did, and instead of telling him, you were already planning how to benefit from it." Derek's voice cut through the tension, quiet but raw. "You knew?" Victoria didn't answer him. She couldn't. The machinery of her composure had seized. Judge Judy set the email down and folded her hands. "Mr. Simmons, did you know about this email?" "No," he said, voice barely holding. "No, I didn't." "Were you aware that Ms. Hale had a separate real estate consultant advising her on this deal?" "No." Judy nodded once. Then she turned back to Victoria with the kind of expression that carried more weight than a gavel strike. "Ms. Hale, we have a problem. You walked into my courtroom accusing this man of stealing from you. But this email, from your own folder, suggests you had information about a critical threat to this investment and deliberately withheld it from your partner." Victoria's voice came out strained. "That's not what happened." "Then explain what happened, because right now the person who looks like they were playing games with someone else's money is you." Derek stared at her. Not with the rage of a man who'd been robbed, but with the slow, devastating recognition of someone who had trusted the wrong person for reasons he was only now beginning to understand. And Victoria, the woman who walked in, smiling, tilting her chin, calling this courtroom theater, stood frozen. The audience saw it, the cameras saw it, Judge Judy certainly saw it, but this wasn't the reveal. Not yet, because the email to Raymond Park wasn't just about real estate advice. And Judge Judy hadn't finished reading the second page. Judge Judy didn't flip to the second page immediately. She let the first revelation breathe, not for drama, but because she was watching Victoria's hands. The way they gripped the table edge, the way her left thumb kept pressing into her right palm, a self-soothing gesture she probably didn't know she was doing. Judy had seen thousands of liars. The good ones controlled their face, the great ones controlled their voice, but nobody controlled their hands. Victoria was not a great liar, she was a confident one, and confidence without truth has a very short shelf life in this courtroom. "Ms. Hale," Judy said, "I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer, not a speech, not a redirection, a yes or a no." Victoria straightened, trying to reassemble the posture she'd walked in with. It didn't fit anymore, like putting on armor after the battle is already lost. "Did you know about the tax lien on this property before Mr. Simmons discovered it?" The courtroom waited. Victoria's throat moved, a dry swallow, then another. "I had heard rumors from Raymond, but nothing confirmed." Judy tilted her head. "Rumors. From the real estate consultant you never told your partner about." "It wasn't like that." "It's exactly like that," Judy cut in. You had a private advisor feeding you information about a joint investment, and you chose to keep your partner in the dark. That's not a rumor, that's a strategy. Victoria's breathing quickened. She turned toward Derek for the first time, not with guilt, but with frustration. The frustration of someone whose plan was unraveling in a room she thought she controlled. Derek didn't return her gaze. He was staring at the email printout from across the room, as if trying to read the words that had rewritten everything he thought he knew about the last 18 months. Judge Judy flipped to the second page. She read it in silence. 30 seconds. 45. A full minute of nothing but her eyes tracking lines of text while the courtroom held its collective breath. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed. Not surprise. Judy was rarely surprised. Something colder, something closer to disgust wrapped in judicial restraint. "Ms. Hale," she said, "Raymond Park is not just a real estate consultant, is he?" Victoria's face went white. Not pale. White. The kind of color drain that happens when the body recognizes danger before the mind catches up. "He's a consultant, I told you." "According to this second email," Judy interrupted, holding the page at an angle the cameras could catch. "Raymond Park is the broker who originally sold you both this property, the same broker who represented the previous owner who owed $120,000 in back taxes." A sound moved through the gallery, not a gasp, more like a collective exhale of realization. The pieces were connecting in real time, and the picture they formed was ugly. Derek's head lifted sharply. "The broker, he was our broker too. He told us the title was clean." "He told you the title was clean," Judy repeated. "But he told Miss Hale something different, privately." She turned the page toward Victoria. "In this email, you write to Raymond Park, and I will read this verbatim. I understand the risk with the previous owner's debt. But if Derek handles the front-end management, I can distance myself before the lien surfaces. We discussed this. Stick to the timeline." The words landed in the courtroom like stones dropped from a height. Derek's body went rigid, his knuckles whitened against the table. Every muscle in his face tightened into a mask of controlled devastation. "You planned this," he said, voice flat. Not a question, a verdict of his own. Victoria shook her head rapidly. "No, you don't understand. Raymond told me the lien might not even transfer. He said there was a chance." "A chance?" Judy's voice sharpened. "You gambled with his money based on a chance your private broker gave you? A broker who had every reason to close the deal regardless of the lien?" Victoria's mouth opened and closed. The rehearsed confidence, the polished answers, the tilted chin, all of it was gone, stripped away sentence by sentence, until what remained was a woman standing in the debris of her own deception. Judy set the emails down and folded her hands. Her voice dropped into that register she used when she was no longer asking questions. She was delivering truth. "Let me tell you what I see, Ms. Hale. You entered a joint investment with Mr. Simmons. You had a private relationship with the broker, one your partner didn't know about. That broker warned you the property carried a massive tax lien. Instead of disclosing this to your partner, you arranged for him to manage the investment on the front end, handle the permits, the contractors, the day-to-day spending, so that when the lien surfaced and the property collapsed, he would look like the one who failed." Victoria's eyes glistened. Not tears of remorse, tears of exposure. "And then," Judy continued, "after the investment you sabotaged failed exactly the way you expected it to, you walked into my courtroom and sued him for $47,000, the money you already knew was lost before you ever invested it." The gallery murmured, not whispering, not gasping, but the low, angry hum of people watching injustice get named out loud. Derek's voice came out broken. 18 months. I spent 18 months trying to save that deal, calling the county, negotiating payment plans, selling my car to cover the contractor deposits because the account was running low. His jaw trembled. "I thought I was failing us. I thought I wasn't good enough to make it work." He looked at Victoria, "And you knew the whole time it was never going to work." Victoria's composure splintered. "I didn't know for sure." "Stop," Derek said, not loud, not aggressive, just final. "Just stop." Judge Judy let the moment sit. She understood that some silences needed to exist without interruption. that the space between an accusation and a response could hold more truth than either one. Then she turned back to her file. There was something else. Something Derek had submitted in his original 2-page defense, a detail so small it had almost been overlooked. "Mr. Simmons," she said, "in your filing, you wrote that the investment failure caused you to lose your professional license. Can you explain that?" Derek closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they carried the kind of weight that doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from months of quiet destruction happening in the background of a life. "I'm a licensed real estate appraiser," he said. "When the property was foreclosed, the county filed a complaint against both title holders for the unpaid lien. My name was on the title. The complaint triggered an automatic review by the licensing board." Judy listened, expression unreadable. "During the review," Derek continued, "they found that I had been the managing partner on a property that failed to disclose a significant lien. They didn't care that I didn't know about it. They said I should have performed better due diligence. They suspended my license pending a full investigation." His voice thinned. "I lost 3 clients immediately, 2 more left within a month. My income dropped to almost nothing. I couldn't pay my office lease. I had to close my practice." The courtroom absorbed this with the gravity it deserved. A man's career, built over years of work, licensing exams, client relationships, dismantled because of a lien he never knew existed, a lien his own partner knew about and chose to hide. Judge Judy turned to Victoria. "Did you know his license was at risk?" Victoria didn't answer. "Ms. Hale, I didn't think it would go that far." "You didn't think," Judy repeated. "You didn't think that a foreclosure and a county complaint would affect a real estate professional's license?" Victoria pressed her lips together. Her silence was its own confession. Judy leaned back. "Let me make something very clear. You used this man. You used his professional expertise to manage an investment you already knew was compromised. You let him spend his time, his money, and his reputation trying to save a deal that was designed to fail. And when it failed, on schedule, you walked in here and asked me to make him pay you back." She paused, letting each word settle like weight on a scale. "That is not a partnership gone wrong. That is fraud dressed in a blazer." Victoria flinched at the word fraud. It was the first time she physically recoiled from anything said in the courtroom. "Your Honor, I never intended." "Your intentions are irrelevant," Judy said. "Your actions are what matter, and your actions destroyed a man's livelihood." Derek stood still, hands at his sides. He wasn't crying. He wasn't shaking. He had moved past the emotional reaction into something quieter and more devastating. The stillness of someone who finally understands. The courtroom erupted, not in noise, but in movement, heads turning, mouths opening, the physical language of people processing something they couldn't quite believe. Derek's face went blank, then it crumpled, not in sadness, in understanding. The worst kind of understanding, the kind that rewrites every memory, every conversation, every late night he spent trying to save a deal that was never meant to be saved. "You bought another property," he said, voice hollow, "with him, after everything." Victoria didn't respond. She couldn't. Her hands were shaking. Her chin, the chin she had kept tilted upward since the moment she walked in, dropped to her chest. Judge Judy's voice filled the room with a finality that made even the lights seem to dim. "Ms. Hale, I have heard enough. You entered this courtroom demanding $47,000 from a man whose career you helped destroy. You withheld critical information from your business partner. You maintained a secret relationship with the broker who facilitated a compromised sale. You allowed your partner to absorb the blame, the financial loss, and the professional consequences of a failure you engineered. And then, while he was losing his license, his clients, and his income, you used the opportunity to purchase property at a discount with the very broker who caused the collapse." She folded her hands. "Your claim is denied, in its entirety." Victoria's shoulders dropped. "Furthermore," Judy continued, "based on the evidence presented today, including your own emails, I am awarding Mr. Simmons a counterclaim judgment of $47,000 for the investment losses he sustained as a direct result of your concealment and misrepresentation." Victoria's head snapped up. "You can't." "I just did." The gavel struck. Once. Clean. Absolute. Victoria stood frozen, mouth half open, the sentence she wanted to say dissolving before it could form. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't applaud. They just watched, the way people watch when justice isn't loud, but it's undeniable. Derek didn't move either, not toward Victoria, not toward the exit. He stood at his table, palms flat on the surface, breathing slowly, processing the fact that the truth had finally, after 18 months of silence and sacrifice, spoken louder than the lies. Judge Judy looked at him. Mr. Simmons, the judgment today addresses the financial harm, but the damage to your license and your career is a matter for the licensing board and potentially for a civil fraud attorney. I strongly suggest you pursue both. Derek nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Judy shifted her gaze to Victoria one final time. Ms. Hale, you walked into this room believing your preparation would outmatch the truth, but you made one critical mistake. Victoria looked up, eyes red, composure in ruins. You included the evidence of your own fraud in the folder you handed me. You were so focused on building a case against him that you forgot to protect yourself. Victoria's mouth trembled. Arrogance, Judy said quietly, is not a legal strategy. It is a countdown. She closed the file. Victoria gathered her things with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The blazer that had looked so sharp an hour ago now hung on her shoulders like something borrowed, something that never really belonged to her. Derek remained at his table until she left. He didn't watch her go. He didn't need to. The chapter was closed. As the courtroom began to clear, Derek turned toward the bench. Your Honor? Judy looked up. Thank you, he said. Not for the money, for believing the truth when I couldn't prove all of it myself. Judy studied him for a moment. The truth doesn't always need a perfect case, Mr. Simmons. Sometimes it just needs someone willing to stand still long enough for the lies to collapse around them. Derek exhaled, long, slow, shaking, the kind of breath a man releases when he's been holding it for a year and a half. He walked out of the courtroom with nothing in his hands. No folder, no evidence binder, no color-coded tabs, just the quiet, enormous weight of a man whose name had finally been cleared. And somewhere behind him, the courtroom lights hummed on, steady, indifferent, already waiting for the next case. But this one would linger, not because of the money, not because of the verdict, but because of the silence between a man who lost everything and a woman who thought she could win by making sure he did.